Hello students, this is your science teacher, Mr. Pierce, with a PowerPoint on the organization of life. As you are following along with the PowerPoint, you should have your signature flipbook created, and on each tab of the flipbook you should include the levels of organization as they occur. Please, on each level, write down your definition, an example, and provide a colored picture helping you remember the level of organization. Let us begin. We as humans, we have been organizing things into groups or categories since we could think about it. Okay? We have organized things such as time. We can have very, very large units of time, such as centuries. By definition, a century is a group of time consisting of 100 years. A year is a unit of time referring to how many times the Earth has revolved around the Sun. We can actually go longer, such as millennia, which would be 1,000. We can go even larger than that. But let's just start with centuries, a grouping of 100 years time. You can break down centuries into decades, which would be 10 years time. You could even say years, which is one revolution around the sun. You can break down years into months, months into weeks, weeks into singular days. By definition, a day on Earth is 24 hours. We could even break down days into hours, hours into minutes, and then minutes even into seconds. Technically, we can even get smaller than seconds and say fractions of a second or milliseconds and stuff like that. However, the smallest whole unit of time would be seconds. So, just like organizing time, we can also organize life. And we can start really, really big and talk about biomes or biospheres. We can talk about ecosystems, communities, populations, organisms, individual organisms, organ systems, organs, tissue, and then finally, as we know, the smallest unit of life, cells. But let's start out small. As we are organizing life, we can talk about cells. A cell is the most simple, most basic unit of life. All living things are made up of cells, as you recall from our characteristics of life. The book definition of a cell is a membrane-covered structure that contains all the necessary material for life. If you just want to write down cell is the basic unit of life, that's acceptable because you have already discussed and have defined what a cell is. They contain all the things necessary for life. That goes into our 6 characteristics of life, which we have talked about with Dr. Hugs. They all have DNA. They have structures for reproduction. They use energy and grow. They sense and respond to change in their environment. And of course, they are made up of cells. We have specialized cells which are designed to do specific jobs. You have skin cells. You have liver cells. You have stomach cells. You have heart cells. You have brain cells. You have all these different types of cells that are specifically designed to do something for you as a whole organism. The human body has over 200 different types of cells, and you have trillions of cells which make up you. Here are a couple of images. On the bottom left, we have red blood cells. Red blood cells have a specialized round shape which are designed to go through your blood vessels. They're kind of a roundish, I'd almost say impressioned pillow shape, as if someone punched a pillow. And that is to help them bounce off from the inside of the blood vessel and move through your body carrying oxygen. On the right side, we have neurons. Neurons are also sometimes called nerve cells. They have a branched appearance where they go from one cell to another, carrying a signal, an electrical signal, to other cells within the body. They are branched out in order to associate with their communication. Those are two examples of cells. I'm sure you know several more. When cells work together and you get more than one of the same cell, we call those tissues. So in your flip book, under your cells tab, you need to write in tissues. A tissue is a group of cells that work together to perform a specific job for that organism. An example that we could use would be relating to your clothes. Your clothes are made up of threads, individual threads. If you think of threads as cells, that's kind of an idea, okay? And those threads actually make up the material, which then make up what your shirt could be. It is as if we have grouped the threads to make that material. All multicellular organisms have tissue. Even plants have tissue. We talked about the xylem and the phloem being vascular tissue. Here are some examples. On the bottom left, we have fat tissue, which is also sometimes called adipose tissue. Its job is to store energy within the cells or for the organism, also can cushion the body, also keeps it warm, acts as an insulator. On the top right, we have muscle tissue. To be more specific, it is skeletal muscle tissue. Skeletal muscle tissue is designed to move parts of the body. As you can see, it is higher, more organized than that of fat tissue. All the little purple dots you see, those are actually the nuclei of the muscle cells. Your next level of organization underneath tissues is organs. Organs are two or more tissue working together to perform a specific job for the single organism. We have many different organs in our body. You can probably name a ton just off the top of your head. Your heart, your brain, your small intestine, your large intestine, your esophagus, your liver, your gallbladder, the pancreas, the kidneys, each individual bone is an organ. All right, the humerus by itself would be considered an organ. Of the vertebral column, each vertebra or vertebrae is its own individual organ, which act together to do a specific thing for the entire organism. But each bone by itself is an organ. Plant organs would include leaves. Each leaf is an individual organ for that organism. Here are a couple of examples. We have the heart, which is an individual organ by itself. The heart itself pumps blood throughout the entire body, but is made up of different tissue, different cardiac muscle, which pump and move blood by itself. Also, all the veins and arteries would be associated with that. Aside from the heart, we also have skin, which is an organ by itself. And the skin is made up of the epidermis and dermis. And those are different layers of tissue which act and provide different functions for the entire organism. Its main job is to protect the entire organism and keep a constant body temperature. From organs, we have organ system. An organ system is a group of organs working together to perform a specific job for that organism. Each system has a specific job, such as your digestive system is made up of organs like the esophagus, the stomach, the liver, the small intestine, the large intestine, the rectum. All of those things work together to break down food for the entire body. This is showing you an image of the root system for a tree. All of the roots are individual organs made up of different tissue, which are designed to transport water and other materials from the soil into the tree. Depending on the organ system, but sometimes the failure of one organ can cause the whole system to fail. Here is an image showing you the digestive system. The digestive system is made up of 12 different organs, all of which have a specific job to do during digestion, but the entire organ system's job is to break down food into energy. Other organ systems would include the skeletal system, the muscular system, the lymphatic system, the nervous system, the immune system, sometimes called the lymphatic system, so I kind of repeated myself, the endocrine system, reproductive system, urinary system, sometimes called the excretory system, the integumentary system. All of these systems are made up of different organs which perform a specific job for the entire organism. Which brings us to our next thing. All living things are called organisms. Anything that can live on its own is made up of at least one cell is what we call an organism. If you recall from the beginning of the school year, when we first started talking about organisms, there are multicellular organisms and there are unicellular organisms. Multicellular organisms are made up of more than one cell. Unicellular organisms are made up of only one cell. Now I want you to keep in mind, multicellular organisms are the only organisms that are capable of having tissue, organs, or organ systems. By definition, a unicellular organism cannot have tissue because a tissue is more than one of the same cell acting together to perform a specific task. A tissue cannot live apart from the entire organism. In the background we have a water bear, which is a microscopic animal capable of living in very extreme environments. Here are some examples, both a unicellular paramecium and a multicellular fireworm. If you can think of other organisms for examples, go for it. When we get past organisms, we have populations. A population is referring to a group of organisms of the same kind that live in the same area, such as a pack of wolves living in a forest, a field of sunflowers living together. We have defined the organism, species, as well as the area that we are defining for its population. From populations, we have communities. Communities are two or more different populations in the same area, and they typically interact with one another. A lot of times you can say that it could be organisms interacting with other organisms, usually by eating one another. Okay? Squirrels will eat acorns from an oak tree. That is an interaction defining the population of oak trees and the population of squirrels. It is only included within the living things in the ecosystem. Communities then make ecosystems, but here's the trick. An ecosystem is a community of the living and non-living things that affect it. Deserts, which would include all of the cacti, the shrubs, those are all what we call biotic things. They are living. The snakes, the owls, the hares, the cacti, all those things that are living. But for an ecosystem, we also include the abiotic things, the non-living things, which would include water, clouds, sunlight, temperature, any weather. All those things are non-living, so therefore they are not a part of the community. However, they are a part of the ecosystem. From ecosystems, we can go into biospheres, where different ecosystems interact among one another. It's kind of a big picture if you think about it, how things can happen in one part and affect other ecosystems. We sometimes call that the butterfly effect. They can interact over large areas. Think of rivers and how long they can be, and how something may happen in one part of the river could affect ecosystems downriver. Also, hurricanes are another great example of different ecosystems. Hurricanes start over the ocean and lead to land. This is Mr. Pierce with my introduction on the organization of life. If you have any questions, please come see me. Thank you. Goodbye.